Frank Lewis stood at the edge of his Montana property, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. These quiet moments had become rare. 20 years of combat across 3 star systems had left him with scars both visible and hidden. The cabin, isolated in the wilderness, was his refuge from a universe that too often needed his particular skills. The comm unit in his pocket vibrated. Frank sighed, knowing that peaceful evenings never lasted. The device displayed a familiar priority code, one he hadn't seen in years. "Lewis," he answered, his voice automatically shifting to the clipped tone of command. "Major Lewis, this is Galactic Council Command." The voice was precise, emotionless. "Your presence is required at Orbital Station Delta. Transport has been arranged. ETA to your location. 30 minutes. No explanation. No details. Just the summons." Frank knew better than to ask questions over an open channel. "Understood." Lewis out. He packed efficiently. Old habits never died. The small duffel contained everything a man like him needed: tactical clothing, personal items, and a few keepsakes. The weapons would be provided at the station. They always were. The transport arrived exactly on schedule, descending from the darkening sky in near silence. As Frank boarded, he noticed the pilot's nervous glance. Even among military personnel, his reputation created unease. The journey to orbit took less than 15 minutes. Through the viewport, Frank watched Earth shrink below, the blue-green world that humanity had nearly destroyed before learning better ways to channel their aggressive tendencies. Like sending specialists like him to handle problems in distant places, Orbital Station Delta hummed with unusual activity when he arrived. Military personnel moved with purpose, and Frank noted the high-level security clearances on display. Whatever prompted this summons wasn't routine. Commander Ava Barnes waited in the briefing area, her expression grave. Frank had served with her during the Proxima incident. She wasn't easily rattled, but something in her eyes spoke of serious trouble. "Frank, thank you for coming quickly." She gestured to the secure room behind her. "The others are waiting." "Others?" Frank raised an eyebrow. "We've called in the best, the most effective, the most lethal." The briefing room contained 4 people Frank recognized immediately, though he'd never worked directly with all of them. Their reputations, however, preceded them. Olivia Martinez sat cleaning her nails with a knife that could probably cut through starship hull plating. The demolitions expert had single-handedly turned the tide in the Centauri conflicts with explosive strategies that military academies now studied and feared. Sam Wilson leaned against the wall, his enhanced eyes constantly scanning the room. The former Special Forces operator had gone private years ago, becoming the most successful bounty hunter in 3 sectors. His modified neural implants gave him reflexes that seemed impossible. Grace Kelly studied holographic maps floating above the table. Her tactical genius had saved thousands during the Titan offensive when she outmaneuvered an enemy force 5 times larger than her own. Jack Harper was the surprise. The xenobiologist didn't look dangerous with his slim build and thoughtful expression, but Frank knew about Harper's work in the field, how he could turn almost any organic material into a weapon when necessary. Quite the gathering, Frank observed, taking a seat. This must be serious. Commander Barnes activated the room's security protocols. The air shimmered briefly as communication barriers engage. 12 days ago, we received this. She projected a distress signal into the center of the room. The message was fragmented, desperate. A colony on Meridian had come under attack from an unknown force. Conventional military response had failed catastrophically. "They're specifically requesting Earth specialists," Barnes continued. "The Council tried diplomacy, peacekeepers, and regular forces. All failed." Frank exchanged glances with the others. They understood the unspoken truth. When peaceful options were exhausted, when conventional military forces weren't enough, that's when they called people like them. "When do we leave?" Frank asked. "Immediately. The transport ship Reaper's Edge is prepped and waiting. Your pilot, Captain Diana Wright. Makes 6 on your team. Frank nodded. They wouldn't call us unless they'd exhausted every diplomatic option. Whatever's happening on Meridian Colony, it's bad enough that the Council is willing to unleash us. No one disagreed. They were humanity's last, most dangerous option. The kind of solution you only deployed when all else had failed. The transport ship Reaper's Edge cut through space with barely a vibration. Inside, the 6 specialists prepared in their own ways for whatever awaited them on Meridian. Frank Lewis studied the colony schematics, memorizing every entrance, exit, and potential defensive position. 20 years of combat had taught him that preparation often meant the difference between success and failure. Across the cabin, Olivia Martinez carefully assembled and checked her weapons. Her fingers moved with practiced precision over the parts of her custom-designed explosives. Each device was smaller than a playing card, but powerful enough to breach reinforced walls. "These aren't standard issue," Frank observed, watching her work. Martinez didn't look up. Standard issue gets standard results. Whatever killed the first response team won't be expecting these. Sam Wilson sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, his neural implants pulsing faintly beneath his skin. His meditation looked peaceful, but Frank knew Wilson was running combat simulations in his enhanced mind, processing thousands of potential scenarios. Grace Kelly had converted part of the ship's command table into a tactical display. She moved digital units across the colony map, testing various assault and defense patterns, discarding those with survival probabilities below her acceptable threshold. Jack Harper's work area was the most unusual. Biological samples from previous Meridian surveys were spread across his workstation as he analyzed their structure and potential weaknesses. "Finding anything useful?" Frank asked. Harper adjusted his scanner. "Meridian's native life is remarkably adaptive. Whatever's attacking them must be even more so to overwhelm an established colony." Captain Diana Wright monitored the ship's controls with quiet efficiency. Though primarily their pilot, her combat record from the Mars uprising marked her as deadly in her own right. "Approaching Meridian system," Wright announced. "We'll reach orbit in 4 hours." Frank called the team together for a final briefing. They gathered around the tactical display where Kelly had assembled their limited intelligence. "What do we know for certain?" Frank asked. Wright brought up the communication logs. Final transmissions reported an unknown organism attacking the settlement. Not native to Meridian according to their science team's last report. Colony population was 2,467, Kelly added. Mostly agricultural specialists, engineers, some light security. No heavy weapons or military presence. The response team. Frank looked at the mission data. 20 elite soldiers, Wilson said. Veterans all. Well equipped. Their ship entered orbit, but communication ceased 8 hours after landing. No distress signal. No retreat. Martinez frowned. What kills 20 trained soldiers that quickly? Something they weren't prepared for, Harper suggested. Something they couldn't fight conventionally. The ship's sensors chirped as they entered Meridian's system. Wright returned to the controls as the others secured their equipment. "Beginning approach," Wright announced. Sensors detecting widespread thermal anomalies across the colony site. The main screen displayed their first view of Meridian. A once beautiful agricultural world now scared with dark patterns spreading outward from the main settlement. The patterns resembled veins or roots extending across the natural landscape. "That's not natural growth," Harper said, studying the image. "Those patterns are too regular, too purposeful." As they moved closer, the sensors detected more disturbing details. The colony's outer defensive perimeter had been breached in multiple locations. Strange structures now emerged from what had once been the central administrative buildings. "Life signs?" Frank asked. Wright checked her instruments. Scattered readings, but unusual. Nothing that matches normal human patterns. Some faint signals from the central habitat dome might be survivors. The ship's long-range cameras zoomed in on movement near the colony edges. The images showed figures moving with strange, jerking motions that seemed both mechanical and organic. "What are we looking at?" Martinez whispered. "I don't know," Harper admitted, his expression grim. "But whatever it is, it's not something I've encountered before." Frank made his decision. "We land 2 kilometers out, behind the eastern ridge. Use the terrain for cover and approach on foot. We need to assess the situation before committing to a rescue plan." The Reaper's Edge began its descent toward Meridian's surface, carrying 6 of humanity's most dangerous specialists toward a colony where something had already proven itself capable of destroying everything in its path. The Reaper's Edge touched down silently behind the eastern ridge, its stealth systems masking any heat or sound signature. Frank led the team out into Meridian's eerily still morning. The air smelled wrong, metallic and sharp, with an underlying sweetness that reminded Harper of bacterial decay. 30 minutes to reach observation point Alpha, Frank said, checking his tactical display. Full stealth protocols. They moved through the alien landscape with practiced efficiency. Meridian had been terraformed for earth crops, but now large patches of the farmland were covered with a strange, glistening substance that pulsed faintly in morning light. "Sending drones ahead," Harper whispered, releasing 3 small reconnaissance units that darted forward on silent motors. The team took cover at the edge of a dried stream while the drones transmitted data back to their tablets. The first images made even Wilson's enhanced reflexes falter momentarily. The creatures moving through the colony's outskirts were horrifying. They had once been human. That much was clear from their general structure. But now they were transformed. Metallic protrusions erupted from their flesh. Their movements were both jerky and fluid, like insects pretending to be human. "They're patrolling," Kelly observed, watching the creature's movement patterns. "That's a standard security sweep formation." Harper studied the biological readings from the drones. "These aren't just mindless predators. The modifications show purpose, enhanced sensory organs, reinforced limbs. Something is directing them." Frank marked several approach routes on their shared map. "We need to get closer, determine if there are survivors, and what we're dealing with." They advanced carefully through the broken landscape, avoiding the strange material that seemed to be spreading across the soil. Martinez placed small sensor beacons to give them advanced warning of any movement. When they reached the colony's outer buildings, the devastation became clearer. Structures had been partially dismantled, their materials repurposed into bizarre new constructions that resembled hives or nests. "Movement, 30 meters north," Wilson whispered suddenly, his enhanced senses picking up what the others couldn't yet detect. The team froze, weapons ready. 3 of the transformed creatures rounded the corner of a collapsed storage facility. They moved with disturbing coordination, scanning the area methodically. Frank signaled for the team to hold position, if they could avoid detection. The wind shifted. One of the creatures stopped, its head tilting at an impossible angle. The sensors where its eyes had once been flashed briefly, and it emitted a high-pitched sound that made the team's communication devices crackle. "They've spotted us," Wilson said, already moving. His plasma rifle hummed to life as he fired in one fluid motion. The lead creature dissolved into ash before it could complete its alarming cry. The other 2 charged with unnatural speed. Martinez rolled to one side, deploying a concussive charge that detonated with a muffled thump. The shock wave disoriented the second creature, sending it staggering. Lewis and Harper coordinated their attack on the third, precision fire striking vital points that Harper had identified from the drone data. When the brief, violent encounter ended, the team gathered around the partially intact remains of the creatures. "What happened to them?" Wright asked, her voice tight with controlled horror. Harper knelt beside one of the fallen forms, his scanner hovering over the strange technology embedded in what had once been human flesh. "Some kind of parasitic technology," he said quietly. "It's hijacking the host's neural pathways, weaponizing the body while keeping core functions intact." Martinez looked sharply at him. "Are you saying?" Harper nodded grimly. "The host might still be conscious inside." These were colonists. This technology isn't just killing them, it's using them. Frank checked their perimeter, aware that the brief firefight might attract more attention. We need to move deeper, find the source of this, and any survivors, Kelly added. The team moved forward with new urgency, the horrifying reality of what they faced now clear. This wasn't just an attack on the colony. It was a conversion, a transformation of both people and place into something alien and purposeful. As they approached the main colony structures, they could see the central plaza had been completely overtaken by the strange technology. And there, in what had once been the heart of human settlement, they got their first glimpse of what was truly happening to Meridian's people. The central plaza of Meridian Colony had been transformed into a nightmarish processing center. Frank and his team watched from the shadows of a collapsed residential building as colonists, still human, still struggling, were dragged toward massive biomechanical structures that pulsed with sickly light. "Conversion center," Harper whispered, his scanner recording the horrific process unfolding before them. They're being systematically transformed. The captured colonists were secured to strange metallic frames, where tendrils of the alien technology would penetrate their bodies. The screams lasted only moments before giving way to the mechanical clicking and whirring of newly converted drones. "We need to stop this," Martine said, her fingers already reaching for her explosives. Frank placed a restraining hand on her arm. "Not yet. We don't know how many survivors might still be in there. We need more information." Kelly studied the colony layout on her tactical display. "The control center has to be in the main administrative building." She indicated a large structure at the far end of the plaza. "If we can get there, we might find answers. And survivors. And a way to destroy whatever's causing this," Wilson added. Wright monitored their communications, keeping track of drone movements. "There's a maintenance tunnel that runs beneath the plaza. We could use it to reach the admin building without crossing open ground." Frank nodded. "Good. Harper, what are we dealing with here?" "Any way to disrupt these things." Harper's analysis was grim but thorough. "The technology seems to operate on a hive network. Each converted human acts independently, but follows central directives. They communicate through both technological and biological means." "Weaknesses," Frank pressed. "The conversion is progressive. Recently converted colonists aren't fully integrated into the network. Their implants are vulnerable to electromagnetic disruption." Martinez smiled slightly. "I have just the thing." The team moved through the colony ruins like shadows, each specialist falling naturally into their role. Wilson took point, his enhanced senses detecting patrols before they became threats. Kelly directed their movements, finding blind spots in the creature's patrol patterns. Martinez created strategic distractions when needed, small explosions drawing attention away from their actual route. Harper analyzed each new piece of the alien technology they encountered, building a more complete understanding of what they faced. Wright maintained their communications and monitored their extraction options. Frank coordinated it all, making split-second decisions that kept them moving steadily toward the administrative building. When they encountered conversion drones, the team eliminated them with ruthless efficiency. Headshots for the fully converted, electromagnetic pulses for the newer ones that might still retain some humanity. "The admin building is just ahead," Wilson reported from his advanced position. "Heavy activity around the main entrance." Frank studied the building through his tactical scope. "We'll use the service entrance on the east side." "Right, can you access the building schematics?" Wright's fingers flew over her datapad. "Uploading to everyone now." Service entrance leads to a maintenance corridor that connects to the main lobby. The team moved into position, using the rubble of collapsed smaller buildings for cover. Martines deployed 3 of her special charges. "Disruption pattern alpha on my mark," she said. "This will scramble their communications for approximately 40 seconds. Frank nodded. "Everyone ready. We move fast. Eliminate any resistance. Secure the building." The team acknowledged, weapons primed and ready. 3, 2, 1, mark. Martinez triggered her devices, A wave of electromagnetic energy pulsed across the plaza. The effect on the converted colonists was immediate. They staggered, their movements becoming uncoordinated as the technology controlling them temporarily malfunctioned. The team surged forward, covering the distance to the service entrance in seconds. Wilson disabled the lock with a specialized tool while the others provided cover. They slipped inside just as the effects of Martinez's disruption began to fade. The interior of the administrative building revealed the full horror of what had happened. The once sterile corridors were now lined with organic-looking cables that pulsed with energy. The walls themselves seemed alive, surfaces shifting subtly as if breathing. The team moved cautiously through the administration building's lower levels. The walls pulsed with organic-looking cables that seemed to carry both energy and information. Harper's scanner showed increasing biological activity below their current position. "There's something in the sub-level maintenance areas," he whispered. "Multiple heat signatures clustered together. Could be survivors." Frank nodded. "Or a trap." "The patterns don't match the converted colonists," Harper continued. "These are normal human readings. Elevated stress levels, but definitely human." The decision was made quickly. With Kelly plotting their route and Wilson on point, they descended through emergency stairwells that had so far escaped the worst of the infestation. The stairs ended at a heavy security door, its access panel still operational but flickering with unreliable power. "Can you get us in?" Frank asked Wright, who was already connecting her tech interface to the panel. "Basic colony security. Give me 30 seconds." While Wright worked, Martinez set up defensive positions, placing small charges that would slow down any pursuers. The security door clicked and hissed open, revealing a dimly lit maintenance tunnel beyond. "Movement ahead," Wilson warned, his enhanced vision penetrating the darkness. Frank raised his hand, signaling the team to halt. "We're human," he called out. "Earth Special Response Team." Silence followed, then a voice called back. "Prove it." "We were sent by the Galactic Council after your distress call. I'm Major Frank Lewis. We have a team of 6 specialists here to extract survivors." More silence, then the sound of heavy objects being moved. A makeshift barricade had been constructed across the tunnel, and now a section was pulled aside to reveal a thin man holding an improvised weapon, a maintenance tool converted into a makeshift spear. "How do we know you're not infected?" the man challenged. Harper stepped forward, holding up his scanner. "The conversion process alters biological signatures. Scan us if you need to, but we're clean. And we don't have much time." The man studied them for a long moment, then nodded to someone behind him. A woman with military-bearing approach, carrying what looked like a modified medical device. "Lisa Rodriguez, former Marine." She introduced herself, scanning each team member carefully. "Had to be sure. We've seen them mimic human behavior before." When she was satisfied, Rodriguez led them through the barricade into a large maintenance bunker. Inside were 43 survivors, a mix of colony workers, families, and a few security personnel. They looked exhausted, malnourished, and terrified. The man who had first challenged them approached Frank. "Alan Foster, Colony Engineering Lead. We sealed ourselves in here when the initial attack happened." The maintenance bunkers were designed to withstand natural disasters. Thick walls, independent power, and air filtration. "How long have you been down here?" Frank asked. 23 days, Foster replied. "We've been rationing supplies, but we're running low. The communication equipment down here isn't powerful enough to reach orbit." Rodriguez joined them. "I organized our defense. We have 6 people with weapons training, but limited armaments, mostly security issue stunners, and some tools we've modified." Frank surveyed the group. Children huddled with parents. Injured colonists lay on makeshift beds. Everyone showed signs of psychological trauma, but they'd survived when thousands of others hadn't. "Tell us what happened," Frank said. Foster's eyes took on a distant look. "They came 3 weeks ago. At first we thought it was just debris from the meteor shower, but then people started changing. The first wave took most of the colony before we even understood what was happening. The security teams fought back, Rodriguez added, but conventional weapons barely slowed them down, and every person they took just added to their numbers. A young woman approached, carrying a data tablet. I was in the xenobiology lab when it started. I managed to capture some readings before we evacuated. She handed the tablet to Harper. The technology is adaptive. It learns from each conversion. Harper reviewed the data quickly, his expression growing more concerned. This confirms what I suspected. The seed ship is designed to transform an entire ecosystem. The converted humans are just the first stage. The Council sent just 6 of you to rescue all of us, Foster asked incredulously. Frank exchanged looks with his team. They sent enough. We're getting you out of here. But the reality of their situation was clear to everyone. Extracting 43 civilians, including children and injured, through a colony swarming with hostile organisms would push even their lethal skills to the limit. We need a plan, Frank said simply. The survivors gathered around Frank and his team as they outlined their plan. The tension in the bunker was thick enough to touch. Many colonists had given up hope weeks ago, believing rescue was impossible. We don't have enough firepower for a standard evacuation, Frank explained, projecting a map of the colony onto the wall. So we're going to do something unexpected. Martinez stepped forward, laying out several of her specialized explosive devices. Standard evacuation protocol would be to move quietly, avoid detection. We're doing the opposite. You want to attract their attention? Rodriguez asked, her military training making her quick to understand. That's suicide. Frank shook his head. Not attract. Control. Direct. We don't run from the fight. We're going to hit them so hard they chase us right to the extraction point. The plan unfolded in clear, precise terms. Martinez would use her expertise to rig the seed ship with experimental nanite charges designed to disrupt its control network. Meanwhile, Kelly and Wilson would create a heavily fortified path through the colony to the landing zone where Wright would bring the Reaper's edge for extraction. The converted colonists share a neural network, Harper explained, displaying his findings. Hit one hard enough, and you momentarily disorient those nearby. We can use that to create windows of opportunity. Foster studied the plan with growing hope. This might actually work. It will work, Frank stated with absolute certainty, but we need to move fast. The longer we wait, the stronger the seed ship's control becomes. They spent the next hour preparing. The survivors with combat experience trained with the team, learning how to use the weapons Frank had brought. Those who couldn't fight were organized into groups led by team members. Everyone received emergency medical nanites that would temporarily boost stamina and pain tolerance. Martinez worked with Harper to modify her explosives for maximum effectiveness against the alien technology. These charges need to be planted directly on the seed ship's neural nodes, she explained. I'll need 10 minutes inside the control chamber. You'll have it, Frank promised. When preparations were complete, Frank addressed the gathered survivors. This won't be easy. Stay with your assigned team member. Follow instructions immediately. No hesitation, no questions. Rodriguez lined up her 6 fighters. We're ready, Major. The group moved out through maintenance tunnels that had so far remained free of infestation. Wright stayed in constant communication with the Reaper's Edge, which remained hidden but ready for rapid deployment to the extraction point. The first phase began with Wilson and Kelly leading a strike team to secure their evacuation route. They moved with surgical precision, eliminating converted colonists with targeted strikes to the neural implants Harper had identified as weak points. Meanwhile, Frank, Martinez, and Harper approached the administrative building again, this time with a direct assault in mind. They needed to reach the seed ship quickly, plant the charges, and withdraw before the hive mind could fully respond. Approaching target zone, Wilson reported over the comm. Path Alpha is secure. Beginning fortification. Frank acknowledged and signaled Martinez and Harper forward. Let's move. The assault on the administrative building was swift and violent. Martinez's preliminary charges created breaches that allowed them to bypass the heaviest concentrations of converted colonists. Frank moved with lethal efficiency, creating a path for Harper and Martinez to follow. When they reached the central chamber, the seed ship pulsed with angry energy, as if sensing their intent. Half-converted colonists still connected to the massive structure turned toward the intruders with jerky movements. "Cover me," Martinez said, already moving toward the first neural node. Frank and Harper took up defensive positions, their weapons cutting down any threat that approached. Martinez worked with incredible speed, placing her specialized charges at precise points Harper had identified. "Neural disruption in 5 minutes," she reported, moving to the next node. While the team worked inside, the situation outside was growing increasingly chaotic. The seed ship was rallying its forces, sending waves of converted colonists toward both the administrative building and the evacuation route Wilson and Kelly were defending. "Heavy resistance at Checkpoint 2. Kelly reported, the sound of plasma fire in the background. "We're holding, but they're adapting to our tactics." In the maintenance tunnels, Rodriguez led the survivors toward the rendezvous point. Following Reich's guidance, the children and injured were in the center of their formation, protected on all sides. 4 minutes to extraction point. Wright updated them. "The Reaper's Edge is on approach." The final push to the extraction point became a desperate race against time. The seed ship, sensing the threat to its existence, had begun accelerating its conversion process. The very structures of the colony were transforming around them, floors rippling into traps, walls sprouting metallic tendrils that reached for any human they could detect. 5 minutes to detonation. Martinez called over the comm as her team rejoined the main group. Frank took point with Rodriguez beside him. They moved through predetermined corridors that Kelly and Wilson had secured, but each passage seemed more dangerous than the last. The converted colonists were now attacking in coordinated waves, sacrificing themselves to slow the humans' progress. "The ship is responding," Harper warned, his scanner showing alarming changes in the colony's infrastructure. "It's rerouting power to accelerate mutations." The survivors moved as quickly as they could, the injured supported by others. Children were carried when they couldn't keep pace. No one was left behind. 200 meters to extraction point, Frank announced, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. Behind them, the administrative building began to collapse as Martinez's preliminary charges detonated, disrupting key structural supports. The distraction bought them precious seconds as many of the converted colonists turned back to protect the seed ship. "Right, status," Frank called into his comm. "In position," Wright's voice came back, tense but controlled. "Reaper's Edge is ready for immediate extraction. Be advised, heavy concentration of hostiles surrounding the landing zone." Frank glanced at Martinez. "Time to use your special package." Martinez nodded, pulling a final device from her tactical vest. Unlike her other explosives, this one was designed specifically for the current situation, a neural disruptor that would temporarily paralyze any converted colonist within 50 meters. As they reached the final approach to the landing zone, they could see the Reaper's Edge hovering just above the ground, its defensive systems already engaging targets that got too close. The ship's ramp was down, ready for rapid boarding. "Now," Frank ordered. Martinez activated the disruptor. A wave of energy pulsed outward, and the converted colonists surrounding the ship froze in place, their neural implants temporarily overwhelmed. "Move," Frank shouted to the survivors. "Get on board now." The group sprinted forward as Wright laid down covering fire from the ship's turrets. Kelly and Wilson positioned themselves on either side of the approach, eliminating any threat that recovered too quickly from the disruptor's effects. As the survivors boarded, Frank counted each person, making sure no one was left behind. Rodriguez assisted, pushing the last of her people up the ramp. 2 minutes to main detonation, Martinez warned. The ground beneath them trembled as the seed ship fought to maintain control of its failing network. The colony structures began to buckle and transform more rapidly now, the alien technology making one final push to stop the humans' escape. A massive tendril erupted from the ground near the ship, threatening to entangle the landing gear. Harper fired a concentrated burst at the base of the tendril, his weapon modified to target the specific biological weaknesses he'd identified. "We need to leave now." Frank made one final check of the perimeter. "Everyone's aboard. Let's go." As the last team members ran up the ramp, a wave of converted colonists broke through the neural disruption effect. They surged toward the ship with inhuman speed. Frank stood at the bottom of the ramp, emptying his weapon into the approaching horde. "Right, take off." The ramp began to close as Frank fired his final shots and jumped aboard. The Reaper's edge lifted smoothly, accelerating toward the sky as the colony beneath them began to disintegrate. From the viewport, they watched as Martinez's charges detonated. The seed ship's destruction triggered a chain reaction, the alien technology consuming itself as its control center failed. In the ship's hold, the survivors huddled together, many still unable to believe they had escaped. Foster approached the team as Wright plotted their return course. "A council told us they were sending help," he said, looking at the 6 specialists who had accomplished what seemed impossible. "They never said they were sending the most dangerous humans in the galaxy." Wright smiled as she set coordinates for Earth. "When the situation is lethal, that's exactly who answers the call." In orbit, Harper connected to the Galactic Council's secure channel and transmitted his data on the seed ship. "Will they send more like us?" Martinez asked, watching the burning colony recede below them. The Reaper's Edge arrived at Earth Orbital Station Delta 3 days later. Medical teams waited on the docking platform, ready to receive the Meridian survivors. Frank watched as Foster and Rodriguez led their people off the ship, each colonist receiving immediate attention from specialized trauma physicians. Commander Ava Barnes waited at the end of the dock, her face grave as she reviewed preliminary reports on her tablet. When the last survivor had been escorted away, she approached Frank and his team. "The council is waiting," she said simply. The debriefing chamber was secured at the highest level. 5 Galactic Council representatives attended via holographic projection, their expressions varying from concern to outright fear as Harper presented his findings. "The seed ship technology shows evidence of deliberate engineering," Harper explained, displaying complex molecular structures on the main screen. "This wasn't a natural evolution. Someone designed this as a weapon." "A weapon against what target?" asked Counselor Van, the representative from Alpha Centauri. "Everyone," Frank answered bluntly. "The technology doesn't discriminate. It converts all biological matter into extensions of itself." Martinez added, "The adaptation rate is accelerating. What we encountered on Meridian was already more advanced than what the first response team reported." The Earth representative, Counselor Chen, leaned forward. "Do we have any indication of the source?" Harper displayed a star chart. "Based on the trajectory of the original impact and composition analysis, I've isolated 3 possible origin points. All are outside Galactic Council space." "The void systems," Kelly murmured. The uncharted region beyond Council jurisdiction had long been rumored to harbor hostile civilizations. The Council members exchanged troubled glances. Wilson, whose enhanced senses missed nothing, noted their discomfort. "You already knew," he said, not a question but a statement. Counselor Van sighed. "We had suspicions. There have been similar reports from other border colonies. Not as severe, perhaps intercepted earlier. But the pattern is concerning." "Concerning," Martinez repeated, anger edging her voice. "Over 2,000 people were converted on Meridian. Turned into something not human anymore." "What the Council means," Barnes interjected, "is that this appears to be reconnaissance. Testing defenses, measuring response capabilities." Frank understood immediately. Meridian wasn't the target. It was a test run. "We believe so," Counselor Chen confirmed, "which is why what happens next is critically important." A new holographic display appeared in the center of the room, A complete technical readout of an advanced exploration vessel. Sleek, heavily armed, and clearly designed for extended missions beyond Council space. This is the Sentinel, Barnes explained. Newly commissioned, designed specifically for high-risk operations in unexplored territories. Frank studied the ship specs with growing understanding. You're sending us into the void. Not just you, Barnes corrected. Your core team, yes, but we're assembling a specialized crew, scientists, tactical specialists, diplomatic personnel. If this is the beginning of a larger conflict, we need information as much as we need firepower. Harper was already analyzing the ship's research capabilities. These labs are impressive. I could continue my analysis of the seed ship technology with this equipment. When do we leave? Wright asked, professional interest evident as she reviewed the navigation systems. 1 week, Barnes replied. The survivors from Meridian need debriefing, and we want your team's input on crew selection. After the council members signed off, Frank remained behind with Barnes. The others had gone to review their new assignments and prepare for the upcoming mission. You knew this was coming, Frank said quietly. Even before Meridian. That's why you specifically called the 6 of us. Barnes didn't deny it. The council has been tracking anomalies for months. When the first seed ship was discovered, we began assembling response options. And we were option what? Last resort. No, Frank. You were always first choice. Barnes handed him a secure data chip. This contains everything we know about the Void systems, including information not shared with the Council. Frank took the chip, his expression questioning. Earth Defense has its own intelligence network, Barnes explained. What's happening isn't random. Someone is testing us, measuring our capabilities, and they're getting bolder. Frank pocketed the chip. So we push back. We do more than that, Barnes said grimly. We find out who they are, what they want, and we make it very clear what happens when you target human colonies.